Hello my beautiful magical beings, it is Dragon Slayer 15 here, and today guys we are going to be starting Denki Kaminari X6 Listener Hanahaki AU, and this is Electric Love Part 1. And without further ado, let's get into this, shall we? You were standing in the hall of 1A, listening to your friend Ochako Uraraka complain about the homework she had. You weren't entirely listening though, so when your other friend Mina Ashido asked, "Hey, listener, do you have a crush on anyone?" you were taken aback. "What?" you asked, a little flustered. Mina rolled her dark eyes and repeated, annoyed, "Do you have a crush on anyone?" You giggled nervously. Well, don't laugh, okay?" you asked your friends who were waiting in anticipation. You paused for a moment, then said under your breath, "It's Denki Kaminari." "What was that? I didn't hear you," Mina said, with a slight smirk. You rolled your eyes and said a little louder, "It's Denki Kaminari." And they burst into laughter. "Hey, I said no laughing," you protested. Mina and Uraraka continued laughing for a few minutes, and then stopped to catch their breath. "Listener, are you serious? You picked Denki of all people, the dumbest kid in class 1A, Mina said, still giggling. You gave an exasperated sigh. "Ugh, fine, I like him, okay?" "Hey, but you're one to talk. You're the girl that ranked 19 out of 20. Who's the dumbest kid in class 1A now?" you said tauntingly. "Oh, right, you two. Come on, we better get to class before Ida gets on us for being late again," Uraraka said, and the three of you began to walk down the hallway. About halfway down, someone bumped into you. You turned around to see who it was, and were now face to face with none other than Denki Kaminari. You stared at each other for a few moments, and then you quickly ran to the classroom and to your seat. And the lesson went on as normal, even though Mr. Aizawa had to get on you several times for not paying attention. You couldn't help it. You were distracted by Denki. You couldn't stop staring at him. And after class was over, you were headed to your dorm, your head in the clouds. When out of nowhere, you feel your airways constrict and the urge to cough fill your lungs. You tried to suppress the feeling by clearing your throat, but it didn't work. You began to cough. You began to cough harder and harder and harder until you felt something rise in your throat. You covered your mouth and quickly raced to the closest bathroom. You went into the first open stall and shut and locked the door. And you hunched on all fours over the toilet, coughing harder than before. After a couple minutes, the coughing finally stopped. Your throat burned, and there was an acidic taste in your mouth. You wiped your lips with your hand and pulled it away to find blood on your knuckles. You stared at it in confusion and shock. And you looked into the toilet to find a terrifying sight. Black and yellow flower petals mixed with blood sat in the bottom of the bowl. You backed up into the small wall and slid to the floor. What was happening? What was wrong with you? After about 5 minutes or so, you got up, flushed the toilet, left the bathroom, and staggered up the stairs to your dorm. You needed a quiet place to reorganize your thoughts and figure out what was wrong. Once you got to your room, you flopped onto your bed and pulled your phone out to look up your symptoms. And according to the internet, which was not a likely source, you had something called Hanaahaki disease, caused by one-sided love, where the infected person coughs or throws up flowers. And there were only 2 cures listed. 1, to get the flowers surgically removed, but if the flowers were removed, all your feelings of love would go with them. And 2, for your feelings to be returned by the person you were in love with. You didn't want to lose your feelings of love, but you couldn't pay for the surgery anyways. But you couldn't tell Denki you liked him. He had a crush on Jiro. He liked her. So how are you going to get him to say yes to you? The next day, you sat at your lunch table with Jiro, Momo, and Kirishima. "Hey, listener, aren't you going to eat your lunch?" Jiro asked from across the table. You looked at your lunch tray and shook your head. No, I'm not really hungry." "Are you sick?" Kirishima asked. "Yeah, I've just been a little under the weather lately," you said, trying to avoid the subject. You got up from the table and told your friends that you were going to go lay down in your dorm. Then you left the cafeteria. As you walked through the common room, you spotted Kaminari laying on one of the couches. and you averted his gaze and walked quickly to your room. You sat on your bed for a few minutes before there was a knock at the door. "Who is it?" you asked. "It's Kirishima," the voice said on the other side. "Come in," you said, and Kirishima walked in, his spiky red hair all over the place. "Do you need something?" you asked, curious. "No, I just wanted to check on you, make sure you were okay," he said sweetly. You stared at him for a second, and then scooched over on the bed so you could sit down. He sat down next to you and looked at you and asked, "Are you sure you're okay? We've been really worried about you." You were silent for a few seconds before saying wearily, "No, I'm not okay." Kirishima looked at you, puzzled. "Why not?" he asked. You were a little apprehensive. Should you tell him? You took a deep breath and said, "There's this guy I like, but I can't tell him how I feel." Kirishima looked at you, even more puzzled. "How come?" he asked. You averted his gaze in shame, not really wanting to talk about it, but you figured the only way you would feel better is if you did. "He has a crush on somebody else. Plus, he never notices me," he said dejectedly. Kirishima was quiet for a moment, and then said, "Well, why don't I help you? We can get him to notice you." He looked at Kirishima with confusion, but hopeful. "And how would we do that?" you asked. Kirishima thought for a few more minutes. "Well, here's an idea. If he's out in the common room, you can go say hi to him and ask if he wants to hang out." You shrugged. "It's worth a shot," you said, rising from the bed. You walked out of your room, Kirishima following close behind you. Once you got to the common room, you hid behind the corner of the wall and tried to spot Kaminari. You found him lying flat on his back on the same couch you saw him on before, with Jiro laying on top of him. You stared unblinkingly at the pair as they made out on that couch, publicly, your heart crumpling like an unread and discarded love letter. An immense pressure built in your lungs. You covered your mouth to stifle the sound and ran back to your room before the coughing fit started. Kirishima followed you unsettled. "Listener," he called out after you. Meanwhile, in the common room, Jiro looked up, hearing your footsteps in the hallway. "What is it, babe?" Kaminari asked her. She shrugged. "I'm sure it's nothing," she said, before continuing to make out with him. Back in your dorm room bathroom, you were on all fours, hunched over the toilet, hacking and coughing up more flowers. Kirishima was crouched on the floor behind you, rubbing your back, in a futile attempt to make you feel better. Sure, him physically touching you made you feel a little better, but he could do nothing for the heart-crushing agony you were feeling emotionally. After you finished, you sat silently for a second, and then burst into tears. Kirishima pulled you close, and you sobbed into his chest, soaking his shirt. That didn't matter to him. All that mattered at that moment was taking care of you and making sure that you were okay. A few minutes of hysterical sobbing later, you had calmed down and were back in the room, sitting on your bed with Kirishima, who was trying his best to lighten your spirits by telling jokes and trying to get you to laugh. But he couldn't stop thinking about what he saw. Black and yellow flower petals. He had to say something, and without warning, he blurted out, "You like Kaminari, don't you?" He flinched, realizing what he had just said. You were silent for a few seconds before saying softly, "Yeah." Kirishima looked at you, confused. "And you can't tell him you like him because..." he asked, waiting for you to return to answer. "He's already in a relationship with Jiro. Didn't you see that?" you asked, confused. No, I didn't. Whatever that was. But why?" he asked again. "They look happy together. And plus, he would never be happy with me. I'm nothing to him. He doesn't even notice me." You said, your heart sinking to your knees. Suddenly, Kirishima grabbed you by your shoulders and turned you so you were facing him. Listener, do you understand what you're saying right now? He said, staring at you with wide eyes. You are telling me that you were willing to die to keep the relationship safe? You didn't know how to answer at first, so you just stuttered. Well, I don't want to make him choose between a girl he's already in love with and someone he doesn't even notice, you said, hanging your head. At the expense of your life? Are you serious? Do you realize how stupid that is? He was yelling. And it was freaking you out. He never really yelled at you. You are gonna die. Because he's a guy that doesn't even know you exist. That comment set you into a fit of rage. Look, Kirishima, I don't care, okay? You've never loved anyone so much that it hurts. You said, shaking. You were on the verge of tears. Kirishima stopped, and he looked at you. All right. You're right. I don't. But look, whatever you decide to do, I'll stay by your side. No matter what happens. I promise. Okay? He pulled you into a hug. All your anger melted away. You began to cry as you whispered softly, "Thank you." And guys, that is it for part 1 of this series. If you guys enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe. Sorry for all the mistakes. And I love you guys so much, and have a good day. Bye-bye!